Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be together. Turn your Bibles over to 1 Samuel chapter 19, if you would. Excited to be together tonight. It's going to be a great time in God's Word. Of course, we've been studying out David, heart like David. Tonight we're focusing on a friend like David. Today is Cameron Samaripa's 15th birthday. She's having her quinceañera later tonight. You know the thing about Cameron, if you know Cameron well, Cameron, just stand up real quick. Everybody knows Cameron. There she, look at her. Look. Cameron is not only one of the most beautiful people I know, but she's also the most loving people I know. And if you know Cameron already at the age of 15 has more friends today than I've had my entire life all together. Cameron's got the gift of friendship. When she just stood up right there, everybody went, oh. I mean, everybody felt better, right? Yeah. That's what Cameron does. She has a gift of friendship. You know, friendship is a gift of God. It's one of the greatest blessings of being a Christian. In fact, it was the thing that drew me in the very first time I came to church. And I remember walking in the room, and the thing that struck me wasn't the singing, it wasn't the sermon, it was the people. And I remember looking around the room, and of course, I thought I had friends. I was playing varsity sports in college. I lived in a fraternity house. Those are my brothers, right? Super tight. And I show up, and I'm looking around the room going, I had never seen anything like this before. These people genuinely liked each other. They actually wanted to be around each other. They knew each other. And I remember seeing that in the guys who I first met, and just after just a few hours with them, I saw the depth of their relationship and the love they had for one another, and I didn't understand it. I didn't know where it came from, but I was like, man, I want some of that. I want some of that. And within just a few days of knowing them, they had become the best friends I had ever had in my entire life. After a few days, I was closer to them than people I had grown up with. I was closer with them than my own family. Friendship is one of the greatest blessings of God. For having fun, for feeling loved, for feeling cared for. It makes life enjoyable. It makes you want to go out and just do things and hang out, and it brings God to life. And of course, we're built for this. In fact, if you go back far enough, if you go way back, Genesis chapter 1, the very beginning, when God made Adam, He made Adam to be in relationship with Him. He was built for friendship. And then God was giving him all sorts of cool pets and stuff, right? He's giving all these animals, hey, name this one, and rhinoceros, and oh, that's a good name. And he had all these pets, but then even God says, you know what? It's not good for man to be alone. He needs someone like him. And He made Eve for friendship. We're built for this. It's how we see God. It's how I first saw God, was through the people. I read the Bible, and then I saw the Bible. It's how we experience God's love and His grace and His mercy and His patience. There's this great verse. I'll just quote this to you. It's from 1 John 4. He says, no one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us. They say, hey, you can't see God? But you can see God. He's in us. And that's what our friendships have the power of doing. It's an amazing thing. You know, David is an incredible man. As we've been studying out his heart, and of course his heart that God called, that God just pulled him out. I mean, there's no one quite like David. And of course his boldness and his faith, his incredible courage. But David was an amazing friend. And he had some incredible friends. You think of the mighty men that kind of rallied behind him, their loyalty to him, their willingness to even put themselves at risk and live in the wilderness and stand up against Saul's army because of loyalty to David. There was something about David that drew people to him, that made people, I want to be his friend. And they were all in for the relationship with David. But there was no greater relationship than that of David and Jonathan. It is one of the most highlighted relationships in all of Scripture, of a friendship that we can all aspire to have. Here in 1 Samuel chapter 19, of course, we've been going through 1 Samuel. And we know that David's having issues with Saul. Saul was jealous of David. He felt threatened by David. He knew David was going to take over his kingdom, and God had left Saul. And Jonathan was Saul's son. And in chapter 19 and verse 1, it says, Saul told his son Jonathan and all the attendants to kill David. Oh, that's awesome family devotional right there, isn't it? But Jonathan was very fond of David and warned him, my father Saul is looking for a chance to kill you. Be on your guard tomorrow morning. Go into hiding and stay there. I will go out and stand with my father in the field where you are. I'll speak to him about you and will tell you what I find out. Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul, his father, and said to him, let not the king do wrong to his servant David. He has not wronged you, and what he has done has benefited you greatly. He took his life in his hands when he killed the Philistine. The Lord won a great victory for all Israel, and you saw it and were glad. Why then would you do wrong to an innocent man like David by killing him for no reason? Saul listened to Jonathan and took this oath. As surely as the Lord lives, David will not be put to death. So Jonathan called David and told him the whole conversation. He brought him to Saul, and David was with Saul as before. We're not totally sure what the connection was with David and Jonathan, but somewhere in there, they bonded. And it says right there in the very beginning that Jonathan was very fond of David. There's something about David, man, he just loved David. And it's such an unlikely relationship if you think about the context of what was happening around him. And here Saul wants him dead. And he's like, man, David's awesome. And Saul's like, I want him dead. He's like, man, but he's awesome. And he loved him. And this relationship didn't make any sense. Because here's Saul the king, and Jonathan is next in line. He's the prince. The kingdom's his. And David was this threatening third person that threatened to take the kingdom away, not just from Saul, but from Jonathan as well. And yet there was something about their relationship that Jonathan just didn't care. And it says he goes and he defends David to his father. Dad, don't do it, man. David's awesome. He's done so much good for Israel. And Saul brings him back into the home for a time. Now they go back to war again, and David does quite well, and Saul again gets threatened. And Saul tries to take his life later in that chapter. He says he tries to put a spear right through him into the wall. And David dodged it and escaped. We're going to jump ahead to 1 Samuel chapter 20. We're going to read through a little bit. There is so much here in their relationship. This is a seminar that we don't have time for. So I'm going to look at just a couple of highlights of their relationship, things that made their relationship so different than David's other relationships, or maybe other ones that we see in Scripture. In 1 Samuel chapter 20, in verse 1, David had escaped, and it comes here and it says, then David fled from Naioth at Ramah and went to Jonathan and asked, what have I done? What is my crime? How have I wronged your father that he's trying to take my life? Never, Jonathan replied, you are not going to die. Look, my father doesn't do anything great or small without confiding in me. Why would he hide this from me? It's not so. But David took an oath and said, your father knows very well that I found favor in your eyes. And he has said to himself, Jonathan must not know this or he will be grieved. Yet as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, there's only one step between me and death. Jonathan said to David, whatever you want me to do, I'll do for you. So David said, look, tomorrow is the new moon festival, and I'm supposed to dine with the king. But let me go and hide in the field until the evening of the day after tomorrow. If your father misses me at all, tell him David earnestly asked my permission to hurry to Bethlehem, his hometown, because an annual sacrifice is being made there for his whole clan. If he says, very well, then your servant is safe. But if he loses his temper, you can be sure that he's determined to harm me. As for you, show kindness to your servant, for you have brought him into a covenant with you before the Lord. If I am guilty, then kill me yourself. Why hand me over to your father? Never, Jonathan said. If I had the least inkling that my father was determined to harm you, wouldn't I tell you? David asked, who will tell me if your father answers you harshly? Come, Jonathan said, let's go out into the field. So they went there together. Then Jonathan said to David, by the Lord, the God of Israel, I will surely sound out my father by this time the day after tomorrow. If he is favorably disposed toward you, will I not send you word and let you know? But if my father is inclined to harm you, may the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if I do not let you know and send you away safely. May the Lord be with you as he has been with my father. But show me unfailing kindness like that of the Lord as long as I live, so that I may not be killed, and do not ever cut off your kindness from my family, not even when the Lord has cut off every one of David's enemies from the face of the earth. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, may the Lord call David's enemies to account. And Jonathan had David reaffirm his oath out of love for him, because he loved him as he loved himself. Then Jonathan said to David, tomorrow is the new moon festival. You'll be missed, because your seat will be empty. The day after tomorrow, toward evening, go to the place where you hid when this trouble began, and wait by the stone of Azeel. I will shoot 3 arrows to the side of it, as though I were shooting at a target. Then I will send a boy and say, go find the arrows. If I say to him, look, the arrows are on the side of you, bring them here, then come. Because as surely as the Lord lives, you are safe, there is no danger. But if I say to the boy, look, the arrows are beyond you, then you must go, because the Lord has sent you away. And about the matter you and I discussed, remember, the Lord is witness between you and me forever. So David hid in the field. And when the new moon festival came, the king sat down to eat. He sat in his customary place by the wall opposite Jonathan, and Abner sat next to Saul, but David's place was empty. Saul said nothing that day, for he thought something must have happened to David to make him ceremonially unclean. Surely he's unclean. But the next day, the second day of the month, David's place was empty again. Then Saul said to his son Jonathan, why hasn't the son of Jesse come to the meal, either yesterday or today? Jonathan answered, David earnestly asked me for permission to go to Bethlehem, he said. Let me go, because our family is observing a sacrifice in the town, and my brother has ordered me to be there. If I found favor in your eyes, let me go away to see my brothers. This is why he's not come to the king's table. Saul's anger flared up at Jonathan, and he said to him, you son of a perverse and rebellious woman. I have never heard that said in my entire life until right now. Don't I know that you sided with the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of the mother who bore you? As long as the son of Jesse lives on this earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. Now send and bring him to me, for he must die. Why should he be put to death? What has he done? Jonathan asked his father. But Saul hurled his spear at him to kill him. Then Jonathan knew that his father intended to kill David. Wow. And you thought your family was dysfunctional. David and Jonathan have this relationship, and of course Saul wants him dead. And just in this part of the story, you already see that they're coming up with a plan to somehow rescue David from Saul's hand. I want to look at 2 aspects of the relationship, 2 that we rarely talk about. There are so many other things we could talk about. It's frustrating to me. I want to do more, but with time, this is what we're going to do. The very first part is this idea of a sworn friendship. A sworn friendship. David and Jonathan have a relationship that's different than any other relationship they'd ever had. And every one of us, we have all kinds of friends. We got work friends and school friends and neighborhood friends and sports friends and guys we like to go hang out with, people that are fun to go to the movies with. We got our spiritual friends, a workout buddy. We got all kinds of friends. But this relationship was different. This was a sworn relationship. Look back at 1 Samuel 18. I want to just show you a quick little line here because it kind of gives you some insight into their friendship. In 1 Samuel 18, in verse 3, it says, and Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. It says he made a covenant with him because he loved him as he loved himself. In 1 Samuel chapter 20, We read this verse already in verse 16. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, "May the Lord call David's enemies to account." And Jonathan had David reaffirm his oath out of love for him, because he loved him as he loved himself. And they set up this situation where he's going to shoot arrows, and that's going to be the warning sign. And if he shoots it far, he's going to tell the boy, "Man, go further, go back." And David, if you hear that, that means it's not safe. You go, you run. But if it's safe, I'm going to shoot it on the side and say, "Hey, it's right over there, just bring it here." And that means it's safe to come. And of course, as the meal happened and Saul was not happy David wasn't there, and Saul wasn't just not happy, he tried to kill Jonathan. And Jonathan goes out as promised, and he shoots the arrows, signaling David to go. It's not safe. And we pick it up in verse 41. It says, "After the boy had gone, David got up from the south side of the stone and bowed down before Jonathan 3 times, with his face to the ground. Then they kissed each other and wept together, but David wept the most. Jonathan said to David, 'Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other. In the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord is witness between you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants forever.' Then David left, and Jonathan went back to the town." We have a sworn friendship with each other. I love there's another version, the English Standard Version says it this way. It says, "Jonathan's soul was knit to the soul of David." He says the souls were intertwined. It says they were so close. They loved each other so deeply. Their souls were sewn together. Like they were one person. And their friendship was so different than any other he ever had before. This one was a covenant relationship. It was a sworn friendship, where they actually looked each other eyeball to eyeball and says, "I will never leave you. I'll always have your back. No matter what happens, I'm faithful to you. I'm loyal to you. I'll be there for you." The very first person I ever met at church, this guy named Kevin. He's Hawaiian. Kevin Kiala now Ka'oi. That's how you say it, I know. He's the one that started the Bible with me, and he's the first one in my lifetime that I've had a sworn friendship with. And I'll never forget, I was a very young Christian. It was a very one-sided relationship because I had nothing really to offer. And he was mature, and he was older, and he knew what was going on, so he was always helping me and pulling me out. And, "Okay, Rick, come on, stop doing that. Okay, let's do this now. And okay, here's how we pray. No, not like that. Let's do this." He was always doing that with me. And he was making sure I got to church, and he was feeding me all the time. But I remember when I was in college, I remember one night we had this conversation. And we loved each other like we loved ourselves. And I remember he says, "Rick, I'll always be here for you." And I had never heard that. I didn't even know how to process that. So what does that mean? But without even overthinking it, I said, "I'll always be here for you." I was 19. What I know about anything at 19? We went through college together. We dragged each other through college spiritually. We made it. He was my blind date when I first went on my first date with Heather, my wife. It was at his apartment. We made homemade pizzas and watched Aladdin. That's right. Tater tots and pizza's what we had. That's how you do it. Single brothers, write that down. That's cheap. He was at my graduation. He knew my family. He came to my home. He was there in all my struggles, and I had a lot of them. He actually nicknamed me Keone, which was Hawaiian for Jonathan. I wasn't a very good Jonathan, but he thought I was. He had vision for me, and we grew up together. Sworn relationship. Every one of us has friendships. We have lots of friendships. We have great friendships. But do we have any sworn friendships? Is there anybody in your life that you've looked eyeball to eyeball? Listen, I will be there for you. I've got your back. I will always have your back. No matter what you need, anytime, you can count on me. Do we have those friends? There's a great proverb. It says in Proverbs 18:24, a man of many companions comes to ruin, but there's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. Interesting how it says, if you have many companions, man, I got like 900 Facebook friends. Dude, I am so cool, man. I got so many friends. Yeah, but what the proverb is warning you against is you might have so many friends that all these people have one little piece of you, but nobody has all of you. And I've got this friend for this reason, this friend for this reason. I give them this much, I give them this much, but nobody has me. I have no sworn friendships. And it says when that happens, you can come to ruin. Because nobody really knows you. Nobody's really got your back, and you don't really have anybody else's back. You're just floating around between them all. And it's amazing. This is what happens when people can have all those friends and feel lonely. And be surrounded, and even in a church, of all these amazing people and still feel disconnected, still feel lonely. We all need a bestie, don't we? And that's what we're talking about here, the besties, man. David had a lot of friends. Jonathan had a lot of friends, but their relationship was different. We all need a best friend, a BFFFEL. Biffle. If you don't know what that is, you got to ask the Hammonds, because their daughter is the one that said it. We were having a little event for Jasmine for Chinese New Year, and she was sharing towards Jasmine, and she says, "You're my BFFFEL." We're like, what in the world is that? We're all looking at our phones, like, what is that? So we asked her what it meant. She says, best friends forever for eternal life. And we had the same reaction when we heard it. We heard that, we're like, oh. Best friends. We all need that. We all do. David and Jonathan had it with each other, just like Jasmine and Carly have it with each other. It's a sworn friendship, a commitment's made. I will be there no matter what. Kevin was at the hospital. My babies were born. He was the best man at my wedding. And when I have struggled the most, he's been there. In fact, even when we were here in the desert doing absolutely horrific in our family, and our marriage is falling apart, my wife and I were separating, and I was watching my world implode, and my friend Kevin was 200 miles away, and he's at my door. We have a sworn friendship. We do a man trip every year. That's what we like to call it, our little man trip. Me, him, and Joe. Joe's my other sworn friendship, my old college roommate. And the three of us, every year, we get together, and our wives don't understand. And every year we do something stupid and try to hurt one of each other and go, just do adventures and stuff and eat too much food. But really, at the point of every single year we get together, we reaffirm our oath. We don't just hang out. We reaffirm. I still got your back. I'm still here for you. 20 years later, I'm still here for you. And we've already committed. I'm not sure how we're going to work out the logistics. Hey, if any of us dies, I'll raise your kids. I'll take care of them. We need that. We all need a sworn friendship. And I want to ask you, who have you committed to? Who have you committed to? Who have you gone to and been a Jonathan to and says, listen, I got your back. Whatever you need, I will do for you. I'm always here for you. I'll always be there for you. No matter what happens, I'll be there for you. Now listen, before you start going, hey, wait, no one's ever done that for me. Man, my friends are terrible. No one's ever done that for me. You know what's interesting about Jonathan and David? It's very one-sided if you look at it. David's just kind of there, and Jonathan's the one doing all of this stuff. Jonathan's the one saying, listen, I got your back. Hey, I'll be there for you. I'll do this for you. I'm committed to you. That's okay. The question isn't who's doing it for you. The question is, who are you being a Jonathan for? Who feels that from you? Who right now, if I were to ask the question, say, who's got your back? Is anybody here going to think of your name? Going, oh, I know who's got my back. They do. If I'm in trouble, I'm calling them. No question about it. They'll be there. They'll drop everything for me. They would die for me. I know it. We need that in our lives. And most of us don't have it, to be honest. It's a sworn relationship. The Bible is full of them. Abraham and Lot, Elijah and Elisha, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Paul and Timothy, Ruth and Naomi. I love Ruth and Naomi's story. Ruth has this commitment, this sworn friendship quote. My wife actually used this in our wedding as part of her vows to me. And Ruth says to Naomi, where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. That's a sworn friendship. Ruth had Naomi's back for life. Even Jesus had this. Even Jesus, the Son of God, needed this. He had Peter. He had James. He had John. He had a lot of relationships, obviously. He had incredible friendships with like Mary and Martha and Lazarus. Great friends. Loyal friends. He had the apostles, but he needed his three. He needed those ones close that knew everything, that would be with him through everything. And they were committed to each other. It was a sworn friendship. Those guys committed to, hey, even if I got to die with you, I'll never leave you. We got you, Jesus. We're with you. And Jesus did the same. I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. You'll never be alone. They had the sworn friendship. They were committed to one another. You know, a lot of Bible relationships are based on covenant. It's interesting. We're not comfortable with it. We don't do it. The Bible is filled with these covenant relationships based on promise. People putting oaths to each other, swearing to each other, I'll be there for you. You know, Kevin and Joe are amazing men in my life, but they're 200 miles away. And I need more than that. And I know that. And I'm working on it. I need men in my life here that I've sworn friendship with. And I'm building those right now. And I'm excited about my relationship growing with Danny, with Chris Jacobson, with Bill, the Summer Reap of family. I need that. I need to know that people have my back and that I have theirs. The second part of the relationship that is so amazing is the sacrificial friendship part. They have sworn friendship, but they have sacrificial friendship. This is not a, hey, let's hang out and go to the movies kind of relationship. There's a lot going on for David and Jonathan. And back in 1 Samuel 18, we looked at that verse when he committed himself that first time. Look what he did. It's very symbolic. It says he gave him his robe. And it wasn't like he realized, like, oh man, I got to give something to David. I got nothing. You want my robe? No, he didn't do that. This wasn't a bathrobe. This was his princely robe. This robe was signifying who he was, his position, that he was next to the throne, and he takes it and he gives it to David. He's giving him his position. He's giving him his kingdom. This is mind-blowing to think about. Jonathan could be king, the most powerful man in the world, and he's giving it away to David. This isn't a short little thing. This isn't going to be just for a week. This is for life. A sacrificial friend will give anything to their buddy, and they'll hold nothing back. It says he gives him his tunic and his sword and his bow and his belt. He gives him all of his weaponry, all of his defenses. It's just like he's saying, here, I want you to be great. I don't need to be great. I want you to be lifted up. I don't need to be lifted up. And I give you my weapons because I will not harm you. And I'm giving you my defenses because my defenses are dropped before you. He's vulnerable before his friend. And Saul, of course, freaks out and goes, man, what are you doing? He's going to take the throne. And Jonathan says, yeah, I know. I gave it to him. I love that line where he says, whatever you want me to do, I'll do for you. I'll hold nothing back. Everything I own is yours. Everything I have is yours. There's nothing I won't do to build you up and make you better. That's a sacrificial friend. You know why a lot of us in this room have a challenge with this, where we don't have friends like that? We're saying, man, I don't have any friends like that. My friends are selfish. Maybe it's not them. Maybe the situation is we give, but we expect. There's no strings attached in this relationship. Jonathan, it's a one-way road here. Jonathan's giving everything up, and he's out. I'm out of cars. I got nothing. He gave it away. I know for myself, when I haven't had close friends, it was always me. When I was, man, nobody's close to me. In fact, when we moved here, that was my big challenge. I got here, I'm like, man, no one's close to me. No one's loving me. I'm so lovable. Come love me. I'm like, wait, why aren't people loving me? I don't get it. And I would do the little like, hey, if you want to hang out, call me. And then I wait by the phone. I did my part, man. I really put myself out there. And I remember I got bitter, and I remember feeling like hurt, like, man, this church's selfish, man. No one cares about me. And what I didn't realize is that people wanted to care about me, but I wouldn't let them. And I wasn't willing to give anything up. If you want to have great friends, you got to be a great friend. You want to have people in your life that are committed to you, you got to commit to them. And give them everything you've got and not hold anything back. And we can't expect things in return. Can't go, I'm going to give you this, and I'm going to sit back and, oh, you didn't earn that at all. Forget you. Ungrateful. We can't do that. Our friendships, we got to give because we love. And I love how it says it in all their covenants. It says they did it because they loved him like they loved themselves. For no agenda, no alternative motive, but just because they loved them that much. Who do you serve? Who do you lift up? Who's better because of their friendship with you? Who do you lay your life down for? Who in this room or who in your life do you give them your best? You give them everything. You give them the robe and the sword and all of it. And you want to see them do great, and you're willing to step back and let them do great. And I'll support you, and I've got your back, and I'm going to be here for you no matter what. And Jonathan was that. He wasn't just there, hey, take the kingdom. He was willing to stand against his own father, who tried to kill him. He put himself at risk of death so that David could become his best. That's incredible. The sacrifice for his friend. He dodged a spear for him. The Bible says in Proverbs 17:17, a friend loves at all times. A brother is born for adversity. All times. There are several men in my life that have been this for me. In times when my life has been messy and it has been jacked up and I have been a disaster and I've given nothing back and I've been selfish and I haven't been a good friend myself, and yet they stayed in there with me. In our family, when it was going through its terrible time, there were some men that they were there and I didn't do anything right. Honestly. One of them was Danny. And I appreciate so much Danny, because what he did for me was, I was going through a lot, and every Wednesday after midweek we'd go hang out together and we would just talk. I was not encouraging to him. I was not building him up. I wasn't helping the church. I was a black hole. I was just pulling the life force out of him. but he did it anyway. And I appreciate that so much. Steve May was a very special friend in this way for me. And Steve at that time, of course, he was battling his cancer, and I remember just how much time he took away from his family to spend time with me. Even when he didn't feel like it and he was sick. And he would listen to me and cry with me and pray with me and talk to me and give to me as a sacrificial friend. Amory was a great friend to me then too. I remember because Amory would come over, he didn't know what to tell me half the time. But he just kind of stood there and stared at me and, so what's up? But I needed someone to do that. The best friends are the sacrificial ones, and I'm in debt to them forever for these things. You know, ultimately, Jesus is the perfect model of this. And if right now you're sitting there going, I don't really have any friends like that. Well, first of all, you need to be that friend for somebody. But let me correct you, you do have a friend like that. His name is Jesus Christ, and he did it quite well. And he still does. Look over at John 15. Because Jesus teaches us on this, on friendship, and he sets a model for us of friendship that is so deep and rich. And we've got to look at these things and wrestle with things, because we can have friends or we can have real friends. Godly friends, Jesus-like friends, Jonathan, David-like friends, if we're willing to go that deep. If we're willing to swear that relationship, we're willing to sacrifice for that relationship, we can have them. And in John 15, he teaches us in verse 9, as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you obey my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have obeyed my Father's commands and remain in his love. I've told you this so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that he laid down his life for his friends. Jesus is the ultimate example of laying your life down for your friends. And he didn't do it so we can sit back and go, oh, awesome. I'm so happy that he did that for me. He did it so we would do it for others. And church tonight, I want you to think about this. Are you being this friend to anybody right now? Who are you laying your life down for? Who are you giving to? Who are you sacrificing for? Who do you love as yourself? And who have you sworn friendship to? Is there anybody? For most of my Christian life, there has not been somebody for me that I've done that for. And I want these kinds of friends. And I want to be this kind of man. And I'll look at one final verse as we close. It's in 2 Samuel. Jonathan and Saul die in battle. And even though Saul was so evil towards David towards the end, David loved Saul. And he respected him. It shows his heart. What an incredible friend David was. Even when his friends weren't being good friends, he was loyal. And Jonathan dies. And David says this very touching kind of song, prayer, I don't know how to describe it, to Saul and to Jonathan. And in verse 25, David says this about Jonathan, his fallen friend. He says in verse 25, how the mighty have fallen in battle. This is 2 Samuel chapter 1, verse 25. Jonathan lay slain on your heights. I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. My brother. Not my friend, not my old discipleship partner, not this guy we played flag football together. My brother. You were very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful. More wonderful than that of women. How the mighty have fallen, the weapons of war have perished. When David remembers Jonathan, he thinks of Jonathan. Of course, David had a lot of amazing friends, and he thinks of Jonathan different. He says, That was the greatest relationship I have ever had. It was the most beautiful and wonderful relationship I've ever known. And he will never be replaced. You know, someday when I die, I wonder what my friends will say about me. I wonder how I'll be remembered. I wonder if my life will matter to them to that depth. That it mattered that I was their friend. That they knew how much I loved them. That they knew they could count on me. That I sacrificed for anyone. Will they say this about me? That's the call of Christ, isn't it? To lay your life down for others. My challenge for all of us tonight is think about your friends. Look at the example of Jonathan and David, and really Jonathan and how he was. Is there anybody who I've sworn my friendship to? And am I sacrificing for them and laying my life down for them the way Christ did for me? This is a beautiful relationship. And let us all commit to have that depth in our Christian walk. To not be shallow, to not settle for anything less, but to imitate Jesus, to imitate Jonathan, to lay our lives down for others so they may be lifted up because of us. God bless. Have a great night.